They're being hauled. Have you heard from anybody today?
Heard from Mark Hydrich.
Hydrich?
Hydrich.
Can't wave
Oh, he's got a head.
What the hell?
Okay, are we ready?
What a day.
Let's go, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order, please.
Regular meeting of Washington, Missouri City Council, Tuesday, February 18th, 2020, 7 p.m. Hydrich. Holtmeyer.
Aye.
Obermark.
Aye.
Hatke. Pettit.
Here.
Scornia.
Here.
Sullentrup.
Here.
Wessels. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will all the council members answer if they have or have not read the minutes of the council meeting dated February 3rd, 2020? Holtmeyer.
Aye.
Obermark.
Aye.
Pettit.
Yes.
Scornia.
Yes.
Sullentrup.
Yes.
Having read the minutes, are there any comments or questions?
Make a motion. Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Sullentrup, seconded by Holtmeyer, to approve the minutes from our last meeting dated February 3rd, 2020. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? By your vote, you approve the minutes. Thank you.
Approval and adjustment of agenda, including consent agenda. You have the 2012 through 2016 landfill ticket destruction request, fire department record destruction request, municipal record destruction request, a liquor license request for Express Liquor and Smokes, and a final pay request for Washington Electric for the Front Street decorative lighting.
Are there any questions or comments about any of the items?
Make a motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Sullentrup, seconded by Obermark, to approve the items on the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? By your vote, you approve the items. Thank you.
Priority items, mayor's presentations, appointments, and reappointments. You have a library board of trustees appointment.
This evening, we have one appointment to the library board, and that would be Carolyn Witt. Carolyn has been helping out at the library the last several months while we were in the interim, and of course, she's always been a loyal supporter of the library. She was our second, well, I don't know, was she our second librarian? Or was there one, it's Carolyn? Close enough. We had Velma. Yeah,
Nelson says
maybe the
close enough. I'm
third.
going with
Okay, maybe there was someone else. But anyway, Carolyn was here for a long time, and I think she'll be a good addition to the board. So anyway, that's who it is. It'd be for a term ending in June of 2022.
I make a motion.
Second. Okay, we have a motion by Holtmeyer, seconded by Scornia, to approve the appointment of Carolyn Witt to the Library Board of Trustees with a term ending of June 2022. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? By your vote, you approve the appointment. Thank you.
Public hearings, rezone 200 West 2nd Street from M1 or M2 heavy industrial to PDR planned residential.
All right, so I know a lot of you are vaguely familiar with this request now, just because it has gotten a lot of press and it is, a very big project. So this is the rezoning and development plan approval for the International Shoe Factory at 700 West 2nd Street. Kind of takes up the whole block there in between Rand and Johnson Street and down to Edith. There is, you can see what's not highlighted, 3 homes on that same block, but otherwise it does take up 2 city blocks technically. So the property is still zoned M2 heavy industrial, which has been that way since zoning came into effect, obviously because of the original use. It has been vacant from what our records can find since 1964. I think the factory closed in 59. They used it for warehousing until about 64, and it's sat vacant ever since. You can see the surrounding zoning is all R2 overlay, meaning it does allow single and 2-family uses. There is a number of, without us going too in depth, there's a lot of single-family right around the area, but there are some of them that use it as 2 units as permitted in that zone district, and they are just requesting to rezone these 2 portions. So here is a site plan that was submitted with the application. As you all know, when you go to a planned district, this is what's required up front. So unplanned districts, which a majority of our properties are, require these to be submitted after the fact. So zoning gets approved. This is all done in-house. A planned district allows developers to submit a development plan that is a little bit unique in nature. It doesn't necessarily fit conforming to our code. It's really meant for properties that are infill, existing buildings that are a little bit more unique, that allows them to basically say, here's what I'm requesting, and when it gets rezoned, this development plan is approved by ordinance with it. And so it's not just a rezoning to a district where they can do whatever is allowed in that district. It's a rezoning to say, this is what's being requested and this is what's being approved. It cannot be anything else. And then if there are any major changes to that development plan, because it's a planned district, would have to come back in front of planning, zoning, and city council. So again, here is the site plan that is required for this. You can see a lot of the major changes to the site is the parking. They do remove, and I'll get to the demolition exhibit, quite a few. There's about 4 buildings to the rear. They are not considering contributing to the historic nature of the building. They are pretty derelict. There's a Kwanzaa hut that I think is falling down pretty much on its own. But you can see on purple here, this is the 3-story portion of the building along Johnson. In pink, this is the middle portion that's 2 stories. And then this red is the single story. So I don't know the full history. I don't know if it was built in phases that way, but it is considered one structure, and that is where the main proposed development is. You can see parking in the rear here, as well as parking in the front that I believe would be designated parking for the apartments in those wings. And then there's also parking on the street side as well. This green area to the south is the designated stormwater detention area. There may not be a large amount of increase in stormwater because of the fact that it is a lot of impervious already with the building and the existing buildings, but because of the fact they are adding the parking, there will be some sort of increase, and so they will have to hire some engineers to verify, so stormwater engineers to verify that they're not going to be increasing any runoff, so that will result in some type of retention pond in this area, and that's what they show that being reserved for, as well as some open green space for, I think, a mini dog park or an area for the residents to utilize. Again, this is the demolition plan. It's hard to read on here. It was in your packet, but you can see that they did mark buildings to be removed. These 3, as well as this building in this middle courtyard to the south. This area hatched in red is a proposed vacation of an alley. That is a 12-foot wide alley. Our city maps actually have it listed as unknown, but as far as we can see, it is a public alley that has never been improved. And so it's, when you go out there, it's grass all the way through the length of the block, but it is technically 12-foot wide easement that is owned by us. We've just never had it improved. So as part of that vacation here, we really don't see it as an asset to us. We don't have a need to maintain that 12-foot easement. And in reality, if someone were to come and ask for us to improve it, we would probably at that point want to vacate it anyway. And so in this case, half of it will go to the property owners to the south here, and the other half will go back to the developer's property to the north. So this is just a quick aerial showing what's going to be demolished. You can kind of see what's going to be cleared out, and then that where it says UNK, that unknown, that's that alley that will be vacated. And then obviously what in red is what's being demolished. In purple here, this is the proposed parking areas. I did add the on-street parking because I'll kind of get to that. That is an area we are recommending be added and striped to maximize the amount of parking. As you all know, the only places that we normally do that are downtown is so we can maximize parking. If people start pulling in wherever is most convenient, they're going to lose a lot of spots along that length. And so if we require the developer to actually stripe that to city codes, that would allow us to maximize on that.
So he's not in compliance with our ordinance for parking with the 85 units, is that what you're saying?
Correct. So I'll get to that. So there are 2 items that require this to be a planned district. But yeah, I'll kind of get to that. The parking and density are 2 items that require this to be approved by ordinance. So just some pictures of the existing building. I know you guys are no stranger to this, but for larger plan developments, we just like to get as much information as we can. So this is looking on Johnson Street, obviously the 3-story side. This is looking south, and so I'm standing at the intersection of Johnson and 2nd. This is on the other side of 2nd Street on that block, looking again south on Rand. This is obviously the single story. To the rear, this is everything that's going to be cleared out. This is kind of the stormwater area that I'm standing in, and then obviously these 3 buildings in a row here were what's proposed to be demolished and created for parking. This is looking north on the left-hand side of, again, Rand Street towards the river. I wanted to show this. This is just kind of where the 2-story goes into the 1-story. This, where this open gate is, actually is where the proposed entrance will be. I kind of go back too far, but in the 40s, Robert Street was actually vacated. It used to go all the way through, and when they built the factory, that was part of the New Deal money to have some job creation, and this was vacated. So this entrance, as you can see on the site plan, will be opened back up for the parking area. So where I was standing in that picture, this entrance is kind of the general area that you'll see into the parking lot that will cut all the way back through to the other side where Roberts would have came in. So we'll create 4-way intersection, lined up driveway entrances with the intersections of Roberts Street. It is not public right-of-way to come through, but it is shown, it does match up where the original right-of-way was, which is a safer, pull in and pull out for people coming out of the parking lot. And then on the right, this is where the alley is. So I know I was out there on a snowy day. I kind of ran out of time before planning and zoning, but you can see the curb cut that goes in there. So there originally was some type of improvement, but this alley is unimproved all the way through. I'm standing on Rand looking towards Johnson. And so where they propose to vacate this, half of this property will go back to the developer side, half of it will go back to the neighboring property to the south, just like what happens when we vacate all right away. Here's some renderings. Whenever we do plan districts, we do require that they submit some type of rendering, what it's going to look like, to have an idea of the end game. This obviously, you can see the 3 phases, 3 stories. Standing, this is Rand Street, and then it's 2nd Street. This is looking north, so the parking lot to the rear that's been added. I believe, and the applicant can explain what the main delivery point will be to the rear, so the main address point will bring all deliveries, moving trucks and everything to the rear side, so not on 2nd Street coming through the parking lot. Just another view. This is looking at the main, so I'm standing on 2nd Street, looking at the main courtyard that will be added parking. Again, just an aerial view of that same courtyard. This is the rear side in the parking lot, again showing where the driveway, the delivery access will be. And right now, I didn't get a picture of it. The reason this is colored differently is because right now that's covered in looks like corrugated metal, some type of tin is what that building facade is. So obviously that won't remain. The applicant can answer. I'm assuming this is probably colored differently for showing where maybe the leasing office is, or to designate here the deliveries are here. That's not residential access or individual apartment access. Again, just bird's eye view. This is the back side as well, showing the parking lot and that access. And then this is just a lower level of 2nd and Rand Street, showing that intersection. There are 3 options shown here that were submitted. We did find out at P&Z that there's going to be a 4th option as well. So on the left here, you see 2-bedroom, 2-bath. In the middle is a 1-bedroom, an actual traditional 1-bedroom apartment. And on the right is 2-bedroom, 1-bath. They've ranged from, I believe this is 680 square feet, a little over 1,000 and like 966. There is a 4th rendering that shows, we don't have it in here, but we were told there's also going to be traditional studio apartments, which are a little bit smaller in square, well, I don't know in square footage, but they don't have, the traditional studio doesn't have walls. You walk in, you have your bedroom, living room, everything kind of wide open. So there will be 4 options, 4 different price points. The applicant did give that information at P&Z. I don't want to share, I don't remember off the top of my head, so he'll be able to share the price points on that. To be honest, that doesn't come into our factor with recommending, approval or denial, but I'm sure that will be a question that you all or the audience may have that he did give at Planning and Zoning. So that's really all I have for slides, and I'll kind of get into what I put into my development plan or my staff report. So like I said, this is required to go to a planned district. If this were to come in just under regular R3, multifamily residential, which is what we require new apartment buildings when they're building out on the highway or building on larger lots to come into, there would have been a handful of things they would have had to meet, not even listing setbacks. So obviously, this building is existing. It's got pretty much a zero lot line, if not close to it, on 3 of the 4 sides of that block. But parking and density were the 2 main reasons. Whenever the applicant came forward, we said, you're going to have to go to a planned district, which is we're going to require this up front. For a project this big, we really recommend that anyway. It's more transparent to the neighborhood. They get to see what's going to be coming in rather than just approving an unplanned district. And this is all done in-house. This makes the process a little more open, or a lot more open, I should say. But I'll kind of get into density first. So they're requesting to have 85 units here. In our existing code, if someone were to build new apartments, they would have to be able to prove that on the lot they can have 3,000 square feet per unit, and that is not per apartment size. That's on the lot in its entirety, open space, parking, stormwater, all of that. And that is a new code, as you all know. We approved that just in 2017. We actually increased the density to try and encourage some more of that development. We hadn't seen new apartments built in a long time, and that was part of our master plan to increase entry-level housing, which obviously has seen us successful with more applications that are meeting those density requirements. In this case, it becomes an issue because of the amount of units that are requested and as submitted as feasible to make the project work. They are pretty limited in their open space. Because of the fact that the building takes up 2 city blocks, or the development site plan takes up 2 city blocks, there's not a lot of room for adding open space to decrease that density. You can't add open space across a block because that would be on a different, even if they were to buy up surrounding properties, that would be on a different block. It wouldn't count towards their density calculation. They're kind of landlocked by having the right-of-way on all 4 sides. We would not recommend demolition of any of the main contributing structure to decrease density because of the fact that this is a historically significant building. I'll kind of get into what our Historic Preservation Commission has been focusing on, but would not be something we would want to encourage. That we have this zone district for a reason. We think we'd rather encourage that before we encourage any demolition. And lastly, like I mentioned, if you're going to utilize the existing building and try and meet that density, you would come up with units that are much larger and would increase in price and get to a market feasibility that the applicant has said wouldn't work, and that's we would concur with that if you get to units too large, you're going to have to charge to an amount that it really makes the project unfeasible. And so with that all being said, we are recommending approval of this request of the density. We think that it doesn't detriment the surrounding property. The building is existing, and they have the stormwater to take over for the extra parking lot that's going to be added. And we think, given the size and the existing building, the proposed density is adequate for what's being requested. Secondly, parking. So our current code requires all new apartments to have two parking stalls created for every unit. That is no matter if it's 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom. They have to have 2 stalls per unit. That results, this proposed development plan is showing 153 parking spaces total. That is 128 off-street as well as 25 on-street stripe, like I mentioned, on Rand Street and on 2nd Street. That comes to a ratio of 1.8 per unit. So that is a little bit below, 20% below, or not, 10% below the maximum that we would, or the minimum we would require for a new apartment building. There are a couple things that the applicants submitted and talked about at P&Z and brought into the record of why they are proposing that this is an adequate parking calculation. One is that they're going to have 41% of the units are going to be 1 bedroom. And so by their calculation, they're saying at least 20% of those are going to have 1 car. And that factors into the fact that they're not going to have the need for that much, for the full 2 parking spaces per unit. Second is that when you have 2 bedroom units, Of course, yeah, you're going to have couples there with 2 cars, but their experience, and he had data from his other apartments that he's developed, that you don't often see 100% of the 2-bedroom even have 2 cars. And so even with assuming that 20% of the 1-bedroom is not going to have 1 car, that's assuming that 100% of the 2-bedroom are going to have 2 cars, which is often not the case. Secondly, they anticipate about a 3% vacancy, which does, has some influx and has room for adjustment there. And lastly, there is, we have used it for other parts of our code whenever we've looked at kind of amending our code. The American Planning Association has national standards for different requirements, and they do have a standard for parking for apartments, and that is when it's a 1-bedroom unit, it's 1.5 spaces per unit that's required, and when it's 2 and above, whether it's 2 or 3, but in this case the max is 2, it's 2 spaces per unit. And so if you would use the national standard calculation, not our city code standard, it requires 153 spaces, which is what they propose on and off street. And so they do have some precedent is what the applicant is showing as to why they think this is applicable. They think that this, his record he put on, or statement he put on record at P&Z that his existing apartments that are built 2 per unit are overparked. 2 of these are going to have 3% vacancy, and then 3 that he's going to have 20% of the, I'm sorry, 41% of these be 1-bedroom, is that he has reasoning to believe that the 1.8 parking ratio is going to be sufficient. And so with all that being submitted and being reviewed, we do agree with that. We think we have the capability of not detrimenting the surrounding neighborhood with this proposed parking plan, especially with the fact that if he does some permanent parking up front for the units that are the closest, and then stripe what's on Rand and 2nd Street to maximize the amount of parking. That is something that we wanted to recommend. Johnson Street is not no parking right now, but it is more narrow, and so we did not want to encourage parking on Johnson Street by striping any of that, and so it would be designated parking for Rand and 2nd Street, not private parking. Anyone in the neighborhood could still park there, just like any other on-street parking, but we wanted to designate it as a possibility as well. I do want to add that this did go to the Traffic Committee the first week of February, and there was no major concerns. They didn't have any comments or changes. The main comments were that they agreed to not add stripe parking on Johnson, to not narrow that down any more than it already is, to not do any permit parking on street or any restricted parking. We kind of threw on the idea of maybe adding some signage that said tenant parking only. We want to keep it open in case the neighbor has people over during the day that they could park on the building side. That'd be no problem. And then we didn't want to do permitted parking for the neighborhood either. And so the recommendation was that this was an adequate plan that wouldn't severely detriment the surrounding property. Something else that did come up was that we currently have in our city code that after 10 p.m. at night, a vehicle parked in front of a house has to be registered at that home. And so it could be an enforcement issue for the first few weeks, but if it did become an issue, that is something that the police department could enforce to make sure that the proper vehicles are parked in front of the correct homes. So with all that being said, we did, knowing that we had a code in place to enforce people parking in the wrong area, and like I stated before, that the applicant is saying that they believe they have enough parking per their bedroom count. We are also recommending approval of the request in that regard for their 1.8 parking spaces per unit. So kind of just want to wrap it up here, and I know we'll have a lot of comments. There's a couple things I want to acknowledge up front that is important to us making our recommendation on this. The first is that the International Shoe Factory has been targeted redevelopment for decades. I'm sure that's not a surprise to any of you. We have mentioned this in our comprehensive plan and in our interpretation. There's at least 7 objectives that we believe the implementation strategy of that plan, that this redevelopment will meet help us meet those objectives that we've listed. So I'm not going to stand up here and read them all to you. I put them in here, but land use goals about entry-level housing, increasing the aesthetics downtown, and providing for more historic preservation. There's a lot of boxes in our comprehensive plan that we think this development checks. Secondly, in 2007, we had a conservation study done as part of our first original TIF that designated redevelopment areas, all kind of through the downtown area as far south as 8th Street for the Bush Brewery, and then as far west for this property. And we did, as part of that study, approve and accept this area as redevelopment project area number 5, RPA number 5, that included Elijah McLean's and this property as a designated redevelopment area that the city thought we should put resources towards and try to encourage. And that's been done since 2007, that we finally have the first person who's serious about taking advantage of any of those resources and going through the process to get that redeveloped. And lastly, we actually just had our meeting right before this. The Washington Historic Preservation Commission has had this on their agenda, and that's for over 3 years now. So just about 4 years, this has been an item on the agenda as a focused area. We have applied for and with matching funds spent over $60,000 with grant funds and with some matching funds from the city to survey this area as a National Historic District. The building itself, we found out, does qualify to be on the National Register of Historic Places, and then we believe the district itself is also eligible, given the story behind that the developers of the factory sold off homes to finance the factory and then had the employees live there as basically shareholders of property owners of that development. All the street names in the area around there are the original families that developed the shoe factory, and the fact that this has been a priority of trying to not only acknowledge it as a national historic place for the Historic Registry, but also significant to our community, and would hope to encourage the redevelopment of that. And so, with all that being said, just kind of, this is a big development. Normally we just go over site plan, with the fact that we do think that the site plan doesn't significantly detriment the area. It does put in a lot of concern and thought to make sure that it actually has the least amount of impact that it can for development of this size to the area, and the fact that we have our comp plan, our conservation study, and the Preservation Commission all having priority on this. We are recommending approval of it as submitted. We do have some conditions of approval. First, I've kind of already mentioned some of these, but I just want to make sure they're on the record as staff's recommendations. That the parking stalls along Rand and 2nd Street must be painted to city on-street parking requirements to capitalize on those spots available. 2, the on-street parking stalls must not be reserved and remain public as all on-street parking is. 3rd, a 6-foot site-proof fence is placed along the southern boundary of the parking lot. So along this area, there was a fence shown on the plan. It didn't give any detail. Because they're, like you saw in the pictures, there are existing homes here. That is one area that if vehicles coming and turning around in there at night with headlights and that kind of thing, we thought it would be appropriate to have some type of screening along the southern boundary to lessen the nuisance there. So we are recommending that change to the plan. And lastly, this is one we always add just to make sure that it is in the ordinance and the developer has to adhere to it, that stormwater calculations must be verified by city staff. And if changes to the stormwater significantly alter the site plan, they will have to come back. So the reason we throw that in there is they could basically make alterations to this corner of the plan with the stormwater, but if they realize they need more space and they have to configure the parking lot to add more stormwater, it will trigger a change in the development plan significant enough they'll have to come back.
Could it do under the parking lot for stormwater?
I'm sure,
What was that?
Could it do under the parking lot for more stormwater?
That's always a possibility.
So, and I
In
think,
case they needed more parking, they could do that.
yeah. And I think where you're going with that was brought up at planning and zoning. Is this area eligible for additional parking spaces? In reality, only 11 more stalls will get them to the code. And that, yes, one, I think the developer would prefer to have the green space there. His argument is saying that that 11 more spaces isn't necessary given on their building or their building layout and their room capacity. I will also concede that realistically, this is 100 yards away. This is a football field away from the back door. People are going to park up and down the street before they park in this back parking lot. And so that's where we said, look, yes, realistically, we could add the 11 spots, but people are going to be parking on streets. So let's stripe the on-street parking, let's capitalize on that because it's going to be happening anyway. And then pair that with the fact that it will have to be an issue that the police department knows and the neighbors know that if people are parking on the wrong side of the street, it can be called on. I think it's just an education issue with the tenants that they're going to know you can get ticketed for parking on the wrong side of the street.
My concern with why I brought that up, John, was because if there is a problem with stormwater, and we have to come up with a conclusion, we could put stormwater, like they do in commercial parking lots, underneath.
If there's an issue with stormwater,
Right.
yes. And the existing condition, we always look at proposed to existing condition. That's what the code essentially reads. The existing condition is how it essentially sits today with all those roofs, those type of things. So you don't go back to a situation where it was a green field, maybe back in the early 1900s. So I wouldn't anticipate too big of an issue with stormwater. I actually looked at the lower corner. We do have storm sewer down there at Edith and Johnson. So really their design that they would have to do is that pipe. What can they push through essentially that pipe without doing substantial improvements even further downstream? How you overcome that is improving the stormwater on site. So, with that, that area there, we haven't seen any calculations, obviously, but I would say that the value that you get out of the green space would, utilize the impervious area that you have available to you, which would be the streets. I think that the green space has more value, or at least if you paved it, it would have more detriment to a stormwater issue, which we do know somewhat exists downstream. Either way, code drives it, so it's,
Well, if it becomes a problem, we have to fix the problem.
and there is a solution, there is always a solution to that. It just obviously takes more effort to do so.
Just a couple more things that I'm thinking about that got brought up. There are 2 dumpster enclosures shown to the south here, so none of them on 2nd Street. There won't be any time where dumpster or trash trucks are stopping on 2nd, Rand, or Johnson. See, in this area here, it will be a dumpster enclosure. In this area here, the applicant or the owner will actually work with Public Works to make sure they have adequate sizing, appropriate dumpster sizes per the amount of units. Obviously, that's something that the owner's going to want happen, or else they're going to have trash overflowing on their own. It's hard to see, but you can kind of see all these darker gray areas are the proposed entrance points to the building. So there's one in this courtyard, here one on Rand. I believe there's one here to the south. Kind of see going into the building here, one on Johnson, and then back here on the front side. So there's only one elevator, and it will be on this main 3-story side. So a lot of the traffic will most likely be coming in this main area. Like I said, they are designated all deliveries and moving trucks to be kind of in this loading area. Planning and Zoning did vote to approve this unanimously last Monday night. If there's anything else, I think that's about it. If you guys have any questions for me.
Any questions of Sal?
Are they following the historical part of the building, like windows and such and so on?
They are. So since this is an unregistered district, we did get it surveyed. It is eligible. It is through the National Park Service. You have to wait a year. Once the survey's done, you have to take a year off and then resubmit, I guess, to make sure there's not any significant changes. We're in that waiting period right now. So we know it's eligible, and from what we can see from what's being submitted, it does meet our design guidelines. It is not required to meet any guidelines because it's not in a national district yet. And this went to historic preservation right before this. There was no major concerns. They're obviously thrilled with the project given it's been on their agenda. But long story short, yes, it meets the guidelines.
Okay.
So then it would go on the historic register later, or once you do all this, it cannot?
It can.
It can.
Yeah, they just don't. They can't. It's more based on demolition and stuff. So it could go on in 2021.
Right.
It definitely as a building individually. What we're hoping, because the owner can do the building individually on their own. We don't go and pay for people to get individual buildings done. We hope to get the district done because that will open up every single building in that district for state and federal tax credits.
Okay. Wait, you may have said this, but what year was the building built, do you know? Or does anybody? I'm just curious.
You know, I don't remember. I want to say like 19.
Long time ago.
Yeah, 1901 to,
Quit using that 64.
yeah.
Okay, that's all.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know when it was vacated, but.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Right.
That's right, and I think that's a good point. The reason that's historically significant, I believe there was big push to have military boots made here during World War II.
Nice historic
Yeah.
information.
There was a lot that was dug up in that survey. I'd be happy to share it with all of you. We paid, as part of a grant, we used Landmarks out of St. Louis to do a pretty significant survey on the whole area, but significantly this building since it's the primary structure.
Okay, any other questions from council members? Okay, thank you. So this is a public hearing, so is there anyone here who would like to address the council on this item? And if you do, just come forward one at a time and state your name and your address, and then express your.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My
Yes,
name's
sir.
Mark Taylor. I live at 225 Valley Drive. My daughter lives at 242 Rand, right up the block from this. First off, I want to commend you. It was a very nice presentation you gave, Sal. Secondly, I'd like to commend our council here and all the previous councils. In my opinion, the city of Washington is an absolutely wonderful place to live and raise your kids. I have a grandson that's 5 years old, and that will be in that area. There's a lot of extra cars and everything that are going to be around here. I can't say as if I'm against the density or against the parking. Maybe it's a combination of both. I just think that's an awful lot for this area. And I have two things I'd like for you to consider. One is, you know, I'm sure with the code, city code being 2 spaces per every unit, that there's developers that have already been here and have been approved for 2 spaces for their developments. I'm wondering, you know, how much flashback you're going to get from those guys if you allow this to go in without having what your code requires, although it is a new planned development, but still for basic purposes, it's 2 spots per unit. The second thing is, you know, what about all the people that might have 3 cars, or maybe even more? What about people, as last I knew, it wasn't against the city code to park a trailer or a boat or, you know, any toys people might have on the street? So I guess what I'm saying is I'm going to trust you guys to make the right decision for our town. I know you always have in the past, and, you know, I hope you do again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Excuse me, Mark, you said you lived on Alley Drive?
Yes.
Where's Alley Drive?
Valley.
Oh, Valley.
Valley.
He's in Don Valley.
Okay. Got it.
Okay, next.
Hi, my name is Sarah Marquardt. I live at 701 West 2nd Street, directly across from the factory. I want to thank you for doing this. It's been down and out of commission since I've been born, so I'm kind of excited about this. This is exciting. I want you to consider street side parking. When you're coming down Johnson North, and there's cars parked there now, you can't see. So if we're going to have stripe parking, that's going to be an issue. So just consider street parking. Maybe there's more parking space. I mean, the green space would be nice. I mean, I don't know. It's already dangerous. And now we're going to have planned parking.
Are you concerned about parking on Johnson Street or 2nd Street?
2nd Street.
2nd, okay.
Yeah, so, but as you're coming down Johnson, going north across 2nd,
got you.
and those cars are parked on 2nd Street, you can't see now. Like, you have to, like, edge your way through.
Start out there a little. I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, that's it. I'm excited it's happening, though. Very excited, so, that's it.
Thank you.
Wouldn't our, when we stripe that, wouldn't we stripe a parking spot so much far back?
There's a sight distance triangle that we
Sight
would,
distance from the intersection. So once it's striped, they'll have parking spots where they have to be, and the sight distance will be down the street further. Down the street more? Yeah.
I think it's 20 feet.
Yeah.
It's a 20-foot triangle.
Yeah, right.
That's what the purpose of the striping is, to get people to park in the right spots.
Okay, anyone else?
Hi, my name's Kimberly Bantle. I live at 234 Rand Street, which is actually one of the 3 houses that is on the same block as the development. And I'm pretty excited about this too. It's a really cool building. But my concern also is parking. To kind of piggyback a little bit off of what he said earlier, boats, stuff like that, but also visitors. I mean, people have people over to visit. On the weekends, our Rand Street right there already gets really busy. I've had to park, my house is on the corner, I've had to park back towards that green area, and I have a small child. I'd like to have more children. And I really would not like to have to walk them 2 blocks just to get to our house when it's a busy weekend and everybody's having people over. So that's my biggest thing is our street's already pretty busy and all that street parking's just gonna make things really rough. Other than that though, it looks good. So I don't know if there's any other parking options or...
So we've had a couple of people mention trailers and boats and things like that.
There are ordinances on the books for those. You've got some of them, we have an ordinance that gets into the height and the width of the trailers. They can, if they exceed that, they can be ticketed and told to move. But other than that, I don't know, Chief?
You have for trailers, you have certain conditions, they have to be blocked. They have to have a sign on the rear of the trailer that's a pretty large sign. You can't park it in front of your neighbor's property. I'd have to look to see if there's something to do.
And they're 7.5 foot wide. There's a height restriction as well. So
You
there's
couldn't
there's
put-
various.
You couldn't put an RV, a large RV in one of the parking spots. It wouldn't fit.
You can't do that, not just there, anywhere within our...
Yeah. There's a certain.
Now, mind you, that's complaint-driven, so if anybody out there is saying, well, there's one, you have to complain about it. You guys just don't patrol the streets looking
We
for
don't
people
mow the
who are
streets.
illegally parked, so, but it's complaint-driven.
I would also bet that probably prohibited as a tenant if you own a boat or a trailer.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a question for the developer.
So there are ways to get around that.
Okay, so what about the visitors though? 'Cause,
That would
I
be
mean,
like
that's-
someone visiting your house. I mean, people are gonna have visitors.
How many street parking lots did that? Parking lots, 15?
There's 20, there are 25 on-street, according to the site plan. That's in combination of Rand Street and Second Street.
Rand Street and Second Street.
And nothing on Johnson because
Correct.
it's too narrow.
Correct.
I would add, there is a restriction. There are various restrictions for trailer parking. Different streets in town have that. Johnson Street is one of those streets.
'Cause it's
So
too narrow.
It's too narrow of a street, so it already has a restriction to where you can't park. Now, I know that's not part of your immediate concern, but there are various streets where you cannot park trailers.
Rand and Second are not on that list of those streets because
they're
they're
not.
wide enough to where they can go ahead and accommodate it, but they still cannot go over those height and length requirements.
Okay. All right, well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Just concerned
Thank
about
you.
the Parking.
Yes, thank you. Anyone else? Tim?
My name is Tim Buttermeyer. I live at 619 Robert Street, right at the corner of Robert and Johnson. And if there's going to be a parking problem, it's probably going to be pretty close to my house because, like we know, everybody wants to park as close to the place as they can. And if you, I know earlier you were talking about the green section, added 11 spaces there. That's not going to do any good. Like Sal said, that's a football field away. I mean, we already have city cars that are parked on the parking lot just right front, knowing that there's a big council meeting tonight. You know, you would have thought that means we pay to park down by the U.S. Bank parking lot, they could have parked there tonight, but that's not the way it goes. Everybody, even when you go to work out at the YMCA, all the spots are out front, they're going to go walk, you know, so it's going to be a problem.
Getting their exercise.
as
They
far
should be
as
getting
that,
their
right.
exercise.
You know, and as far as the building itself being done, I think that's a great project, and I recommend, or, you know, highly respect Ed for doing this project and trying to get this project done and everything else. But I do believe that the parking is going to be a problem, but I think it may be kind of like the Camp Street Bridge situation, where it may not be as bad as what everybody thinks it is and that. So I am in favor of it, even though I'm sure it's going to affect me, but I am in favor of it. And I appreciate Sal doing such a great job as far as explaining it to us at the Planning and Zoning meeting. He did a wonderful job there. And that, I kind of wish that, you know, Joe and Gretchen would have been at the Planning and Zoning meeting somewhat, so we would have had some representation there too besides, but I understand sometimes people are busy and everything else too. But overall, I think it's going to be a good project, but I do believe that there could be some problems with the parking before it's all said and done. But it'd be a good improvement to the area, let's put it like that.
A little urban renewal.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Hoss,
Thank
don't
you.
Hoss, don't you think that we're in position to address a lot of those parking problems? Like, if it does come about, you would tell me or Gretchen or the chief, and we would try to address that?
Yeah, I think so. I think that overall, you know, as far as that kind of stuff, I don't think it's going to be quite as bad as what everybody says. You know, like Ed's got out there off of Bluff Road, the new complex he's got now, he's supplying 2 spots per lot there. And if you drive by there any given time, it's not full, you know what I'm saying? So I think there's still places, and when visitors come, there's going to be times where it's going to be bad, but it ain't no different than your neighbor having a party, you know what I'm saying? And there are going to be a lot of people there. The only bad thing is you're going to have 85 neighbors in a very tight area, so it's going to make it a little rough. But, you know, you'll get over it and everything else before it's all said and done. So,
Very
thank
good.
you again.
Thank you, Tim. Anyone else?
I just have something to add really quick. My name is Christine Taylor. I live at 242 Rand. And the only thing I want to add to maybe your guys' thought is if you do own a home in this area and you do have a trailer, you know, a four-wheeler, a wave runner, and you're out for the day and you come home and the parking is taken in front of your home, I don't know anybody that would want to park their, you know, several $1,000 property on the next street over. Or, I mean, are we supposed to call the police every time someone's parked in front of our home if we can't park our property in front of our home? I don't know, just something to think about.
Do you have off-street parking places at yours? I mean, do you have a driveway?
I personally have a driveway,
Okay,
but I'm
just asking.
just something
Yeah,
to think about because
right.
there are people all around me that do not.
I understand.
So,
Right.
thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you, Christine. Oh, here we go.
Hi, my name is Joan Meyer, and we live at 602 West 2nd. And I just want to say that I am concerned about the parking. I remember when the plastic factory was there, Aquarius Plastics, and we had a lot of trouble with people blocking us in or whatever. And, you know, it's been vacant for a long time. So I think, I'm not sure we're going to be ready for the excessive parking or whatever, but I do think that it will be a problem, but not that I'm willing to cope with it or whatever, but I just want to mention it now. And I hope the water and sewer system will work out because it is an older part of town. And that's it. So
Okay, thank you, Joan. Anyone else? Ed?
Hello, my name is Ed Schmeltz. I'm the developer for the project. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody, neighbors. It sounds like for the most part, everybody's pretty excited about the project itself, and I really appreciate that. That's always a good feeling to know that the community is behind you for the most part. I do totally understand their concerns with the parking. I personally think a lot of that comes just from the code saying 2 spots per unit. Many towns around here are 1.5 spots per unit, and if you look at that, we're at 1.5 on-site spots per unit, not including the street spots. So to many other, now I know that's not your code, but I'm just saying for many other local codes, we do meet that. I have several other subdivisions that have 2 and 3 bedroom units that are in those 1.5 codes, and we have no problems with 3 and 2 bedrooms. So I feel very, very strongly that even if we did not count the street parking and get it up to 1.8, I still feel very strongly that we have enough parking proposed to make this work. Frankly, it wouldn't benefit me at all as a developer putting this much money into this not to have enough parking. It doesn't benefit me to have all of my entrances to the project. Most of them are inside the corridor and they're all pretty tight. It wouldn't benefit me at all to have people parking 2 blocks away. You know, we wouldn't be able to lease everything up. It wouldn't work. So I feel very strongly that what we have proposed is sufficient parking. Just to answer a couple of questions, you know, we won't allow trailer parking or boat parking in our lot. So I know that was a concern where what if somebody pulls in with a trailer or a boat and it takes up multiple spots? We don't allow that. So once again, it is complaint driven by other tenants, but that would eliminate, you know, losing a few spots there for us. And you know, I know the comment was brought up that maybe other developers have came in here and asked for a variance on. I don't think anybody has ever asked for this because I believe this is only the second R4 proposal. And, you know, what are we going to tell the next guy? Well, I mean, my simple answer is I really believe this is a special project that deserves a little bit of special consideration. It has been vacant for 60 years. You know, I don't think that a little bit of a parking variance is a huge deal. And that's about all I have. Is there any questions?
Can you
for me?
point out, can you give them the laser to show where the entrance is? I don't know that we saw that, or Sal went over that. Could you show the rest of them where the entrances are going to be for
Yes.
tenants?
So right here, oh, the entrances to the homes, to the building, I'm sorry. Right here is one. Right here is one. Here, 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 and there. And also there's one into the basement here. This one is an emergency exit. It won't be a primary exit.
Is the one on Rand also an exit?
Oop, God darn it. Right there.
That's an exit?
Yes. It's a primary. It's not an emergency exit.
Does the council have any questions of Ed?
Ed, will your parking be open parking or will they be assigned per unit?
It will be open. These areas here in the corridors, these front and back right here, those will be assigned.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions of Ed? Comments?
Good luck.
Okay. I'm gonna need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
You know, I know, Sarah, you were concerned about parking on Second Street. I know you weren't around back in the day when the place was open, but a lot of these people that live in these houses around that whole block probably weren't around when that business was open, but I rehabbed the house on Johnson Street, and when I was doing the rehab, I would drive around when I left and looked at the parking around, you know, because I was worried about parking for whoever I sold the building to, or place for them to park in the alley. Okay.
I just don't want my car to get hit.
Well, I'm getting to that. You could talk to any one of the firemen, and they'll talk to you till they're blue or red in the face to tell you that there's problems all over Washington with parking on streets. And that street, I think, is a lot wider than a lot of streets where we have a lot closer parking with less accidents. And, you know, on one hand, you people got to think about this. On one hand, I'm getting something fixed up that's going to enhance the property of my house. The other hand is this might be a burden on my parking, but give it a chance and see once how it goes, and I'm sure within the city and the owner, it'll all get straightened out. Well, I'm speaking to everybody about it. Still on gut side.
Is there anyone else? LB?
Excuse me, my name is LB Eckelkamp. I'm one of the owners of the property and have been for many, many years. I was just thinking a while ago when we talked about that street being vacated. That was a year before I was born. And I'm no spring chicken, so we've owned that property a long time. We also bought, some of you may know that we bought the Deb Shoe Factory building some years ago, and we were able to find a developer who turned it into apartments many years ago, and I think it's just been a tremendous asset to that area, rather than have the building there going downhill. And we've been looking for someone who could do exactly what Ed is talking about doing on this property. It fulfills so many of the things that we've been looking for here in Washington. We need some workforce housing, and you could do fancy deals with this thing and charge a lot of rent, but that's not what we need. What we need is some apartments that are usable and that people can afford to live in. And it just turned out perfectly as far as his usage of the property, the units, number of units that he's planning to put in there, in my opinion, works perfectly for the space. We've got plenty of parking, in my judgment, and I think when it's all said and done, everybody will be happy with the parking, but elated with the fact that you don't have the rundown building in your block, and all of the people in the neighborhoods' homes are going to have increased in value because of the rehabilitation of this eyesore. It's been something that I haven't been proud of for a long time, and I've been hoping that we were able to find something exactly like what is being proposed here. So I really am very, very happy to endorse this and to sell the property to Ed, because I think it's good for everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Albie.
Mayor, I was just going to ask Ed, people I've talked to are very excited about it, just for the same reasons we've been saying. In fact, the question I get most often is, when do you anticipate it being finished and ready for habitation? Year and a half.
Is there anyone else? Okay. So this will conclude the public hearing. We'll need a motion to accept.
Make a motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Holtmeyer, seconded by Scornia, to accept the public hearing into the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? By your vote, you accepted the item. Thank you.
An ordinance rezoning 700 West 2nd Street from M2 Industrial to PDR Planned Residential in the City of Washington, Franklin County, Missouri.
Holtmeyer.
Introduced by Councilmember Holtmeyer.
Okay, I just was texting with Mark. So we have the ordinance for the rezoning on tonight, and then a resolution for development plan needs to be passed as well. Apparently, we cannot separate those. I was unaware of that. So we'll just have to move both of those to March 2nd, if that is okay and doesn't screw with any closings or anything.
Okay, so we can't have them separated? Like
Yeah.
tonight, we're going to do one tonight and another,
Well, I was originally.
that was our plan, but we
But-
can't do that.
You have to do them both in the same night.
The code says they have to be done simultaneously. You have to first adopt a resolution approving the development plan, and then you adopt the ordinance approving the rezoning, so,
All on the same night?
yes.
Okay,
So, my
all
apologies.
right.
So we will
No.
bring that back on March the 2nd for that. And at that time, too, with the development plan, we'll have the exhibits, everything else that we had that will be attached to the resolution.
Will there be a public hearing again that
No.
night?
No.
No, so
This is
that
the
just,
hearing.
this is it, okay,
This is the hearing, that was it.
okay, all right,
Could I get a motion to postpone?
yes.
So moved.
Okay, so we have a motion by Pettit, seconded by Sullentrup, to postpone this item, item 3B. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? By your vote, you'll postpone the item. Thank you.
Citizens' comments.
Thank you all for being here. So, appreciate it. You're welcome. Is there anyone here who would like to address the council on any item that is not on the agenda?
Report of department heads, Spyglass Project Audit.
Good evening, council.
I'm Aaron.
I've been working on looking at the city's phone bills and internet bills and trying to go over and trying to save some money. And we started this process, or I started it, I guess, about a year ago. And the first part of that process was looking at the fire alarms, which we've started that process. And so after we get done with that, the balance of this project is looking at what's left after that. So there's a company called Spyglass, and they come through and they evaluate your phone charges and see if they can save you money. So they've done that, excluding the part that we've carved out for the alarm project. And in doing so, they found an additional $6,000 that they feel that they can save you per month. So and that's including our AT&T, our regular accounts, and our mobility accounts, both combined. So they do charge a fee. They're giving us a 45% discount on that. And so within 7 months' time, we will recoup that fee. And then this is, as far as I know, this is the last part of our bills of the balance of them that we can actually clean up. So after doing this, our AT&T monthly costs will be down to approximately $1,500. And right-
Amazing.
Yeah, and we started out, well, actually, 2 years ago, we started out at almost $45,000. And a big chunk of that was Lisa's phone lines that we ended up switching over, and then, so it's
Just
been a long
amazing.
process, but we've really cut down on that. So
Well, thank
tonight,
you.
we're just asking for, to continue with this and to go ahead and proceed with Spyglass to get them to do their part of the
Remove these-
project after
remove
the
these
fire
accounts,
alarm.
Remove these lines to save us the funds.
Right.
So that's what my question was. It's reducing the number of lines because we no longer need them, or
Correct.
is it?
Some of them. Some of them.
reduction on the lines that we do have.
Right, there's a handful of lines that we don't use, and then there are, we basically have two plans with AT&T, and they're antiquated plans, so they're looking at combining the lines that we have left under a new plan with AT&T. And that's, I don't quite understand it all, they can do a much better job of explaining that, but that's part of the plan, is that we're no longer under a plan with AT&T. And so every few months, AT&T just keeps raising the rates on us. So then they want to get us under a plan. But yes, we've been diligently looking at all of those lines, trying to see if we can, what else we can do with those. And NOC also has been working with me to try to, it's been kind of a big group effort with a lot of different people working together.
So this has nothing to do with the cell bill either, right?
Well, they did look at our cell phone, so there was a little bit on the cell phone that they could save us.
Okay.
But we looked at that, I mean,
That was
a
reviewed
couple of
already.
years ago, and when there was a shift in staff, we looked at that.
Okay.
Pretty diligent. So there was just a little piece of that that they looked at that we could save money on, so.
Is this part of a regular review, or like are these?
No,
No, unfortunately, that's why it's here.
yeah, that's why
That's
there's
why the
such
savings is this
significant
substantial.
Maybe now it can be.
Yeah.
Now it can be, yes.
Great.
Hopefully, we'll never get to that point again where it gets to that level, so.
That's great. That's a great.
But
Good job, thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank Mary
Yeah,
for her
thank you,
hard work
Mary.
in getting this together, because, like
That's
you said, this has been a long time coming. We knew we had excessive amount of lines, and so now you can see the savings.
Pretty amazing.
thank you.
Thank you. We'll entertain a motion to accept this and approve this.
Make a motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Pettit, second by Holtmeyer, to accept and approve this item. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? By your vote, you approve the item. Thank you.
I just have two other things to add. The traffic signal at 100 and High Street, the contractor that MoDOT selected was doing some pressure drilling yesterday, and they were removing the old signal pole base, I think, today. I've been told that once they start, they could be done in approximately a week, which I think is pretty quick, but hopefully the weather holds out and they will get that traffic signal back up. I would again just urge caution as you work through that intersection for the remaining week. In addition, Ameren is still replacing some poles between essentially Jefferson and Washington Street, and they're working their way to the west. There will be some additional street closures on 3rd Street going into the next few weeks. We'll be posting those on our Facebook page, on the city website. Detours would essentially be through the gridded streets that are in the area. I don't anticipate any big issues, but we are allowing Ameren to close those streets throughout the day to work as efficiently and safely as possible.
Any questions of John?
Next weekend, Legion has a pretty substantial fundraiser. Not this weekend, but next weekend.
And I think, okay, we'll make sure we coordinate that with Ameren. And I know they've been talking to the Legion as well, so they are working, I think they're west of 47 until they can coordinate some things with the hospital. So it'll be mostly between 47 and Boone Street, actually.
Anything else? Okay.
Ordinances, resolutions. An ordinance approving amendment number 22 to the development plan for acquisition of an industrial tract commonly known as Elmer C. Heidman Industrial Park, providing for the sale of currently unplatted lots 21, 22, and 23 for Project Trace.
Introduced by Councilmember Sullentrup.
So this is, as you know, whenever we sell a lot in the industrial park in Hydeman specifically, we have to have an amendment to the development plan approved. So this was originally, that's why it says in here, lots 21, 22, 23. It was never platted that way. We just advertised it as the possibility of selling out 3 lots. Project Trace is interested in all 3. So you can kind of see where it's graded. It will be this entire block here. And then later on your agenda tonight, there is a final plat to actually get that new lot recorded as one.
Any questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Sal.
An ordinance approving amendment number 22 to the development plan for acquisition of an industrial tract commonly known as Elmer C. Heidman Industrial Park, providing for the sale of currently unplatted lots 21, 22, and 23 for Project Trace. Scornia?
Yes.
Obermark?
Yes.
Wessels?
Aye.
Pettit?
Yes.
Sullentrup?
Yes.
Holtmeyer?
Aye.
By your vote, you approve the ordinance. Thank you.
An ordinance accepting the bid from Modern Auto Company, Inc., Washington, Missouri, and to approve the purchase of a 2020 3/4-ton 4x4 truck with accessories and amend the 2019-2020 budget by the City of Washington, Missouri.
Holtmeyer.
Introduced by Councilmember Holtmeyer. Tony?
Good evening, Council. This is just a general purpose 3/4-ton pickup. We took one out of our fleet last year that was pretty beat up, and we had this budgeted for last year. Unfortunately, we didn't get any bids when we sent it out, so we had to redo it again this year. So at this time, with this vehicle, we are also going to remove another one out of our fleet, reduce the number we have in our fleet. The one we're going to replace is a 99 model. It's not the oldest in the fleet, but it needs to be replaced. So,
This liftgate too, right?
with the liftgate, yeah.
Is that with a trade-in?
Pardon?
What are you gonna do with the Dodge?
Probably put it on public surplus. I don't know if Purple Wave would want to sell it. I don't know what the value of it is. One of the websites will sell it all. It's at the landfill right now, and the landfill is just tough on our vehicles out there. If you're interested, come by the shop. We'll give you more details on it.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you, Tony.
All right, thank you.
An ordinance accepting the bid from Modern Auto Company, Inc., Washington, Missouri, and to approve the purchase of a 2020 3/4-ton 4x4 truck with accessories and amend the 2019-2020 budget by the City of Washington, Missouri. Scornia?
Yes.
Obermark?
Yes.
Wessels? Pettit?
Yes.
Sullentrup? Holtmeyer?
Aye.
By your vote, you approve the ordinance. Thank you.
An ordinance amending the 2020 budget for the period of October 1, 2019 through September 30, 2020 for the City of Washington, Missouri.
Sullentrup.
Introduced by Councilmember Sullentrup.
So this is a budget amendment, just kind of fixing a little mistake we had. We approved the settlement with Pangea for that $166,000 to come out of the Stormwater Improvement Fund, which did have funds in it. But since there was an increase to that contract amount, we paid that off and then realized John had a project that he tried to pay, and I had taken the money from him. So this budget amendment fixes that and replaces that, what I took out from stormwater, the full stormwater account to the Stormwater Improvement Fund back where John can use it for his projects. So.
Sal and I were not at odds here, I promise. Sounds that way, but we weren't. We were good.
Any questions or comments? Okay, thank you.
An ordinance amending the 2020 budget for the period of October 1, 2019 through September 30, 2020 for the City of Washington, Missouri. Scornia?
Yes.
Obermark?
Yes.
Wessels?
Aye.
Pettit?
Yes.
Sullentrup? Holtmeyer?
Aye.
By your vote, you approve the ordinance. Thank you.
An ordinance amending the provisions of Chapter 335, Schedule 2 of the Washington City Code by adding provisions for a stop sign at the location described below.
Holtmeyer.
Introduced by Councilmember Holtmeyer.
So some time ago at the Traffic Committee, I think Chief brought to my attention that there were various stop signs around town that were not set per ordinance. I found that odd that you had to set them per ordinance, so we worked with Mark just to verify that. All of them do have to be set per ordinance, so I learned something new. So these were a list of ones that were posted on the streets but were not set for ordinance. So if you felt the need to run a stop sign without Chief being able to enforce it, that is now over. We've cleaned this up, so this is essentially a cleanup item, and you will be required to stop at said stop signs.
A lot of these are new streets, by the way.
Yes,
So they
they
didn't
are.
miss that many, so I asked the same question.
Not downtown, it's the newer part of town.
They do have stop signs, they're just,
They are posted, but they were not approved per ordinance by you all.
Okay, any questions or comments?
An ordinance amending the provisions of Chapter 335, Schedule 2 of the Washington City Code by adding provisions for stop sign at the location described below. Scornia?
Yes.
Obermark?
Yes.
Wessels?
Yes.
Pettit?
Yes.
Sullentrup? Holtmeyer?
Aye.
By your vote, you approve the ordinance. Thank you.
An ordinance amending Section 700.020 Water Service Pipe of the Code of the City of Washington, Missouri.
Holtmeyer.
Introduced by Councilmember Holtmeyer.
So if you recall, a couple years ago, we amended our code to allow PEX piping in the interior plumbing systems of home, commercial, residential, any home essentially in Washington. Previously, copper was the only piping you could use on the interior part. I don't know the time, but we did allow for plastic pipe to be made at the actual water tap going to the home. So that's been in the code for quite some time as far as plastic coming to the home. In order to circumvent a perceived grounding problem, the building code requires grounding of all structures. Kind of an obvious thing. City staff, or the city has recognized water service lines as being a secondary grounding source, which the building code does not. I don't know how that came to be, but once we changed the code to allow plastic in the house, what we were seeing in the field was plastic in a home, a stub of copper 10 foot through the foundation wall, then tied into plastic. So you essentially created another joint on that water service line, which didn't provide the value that you wanted out of it anyway. So this actually removes that requirement, that copper stub through the wall. The grounding is still provided via the building code, the way it should be, but it just removes that copper stub essentially through the foundation wall.
And you won't have to cross meters.
What's that?
And you won't have to cross the meters.
Correct. So it eliminates a joint, which is a potential source for a failure. Not saying it would, but anytime that you connect two different pieces of material, there is that potential. So again, it's a cleanup item essentially.
Any questions?
If you want a secondary ground, you'd have to drive on a rod in the ground and put a secondary ground onto.
Correct. Like
Or
the
just
building
foundation
code.
ground.
Yeah.
Like the building code specifies.
Better anyways, so.
Yes.
Okay, any questions or comments?
No problem, buddy.
An ordinance amending Section 700.020 Water Service Pipe of the Code of the City of Washington, Missouri. Scornia?
Yes.
Obermark?
Yes.
Wessels? Pettit?
Yes.
Sullentrup?
Yes.
Holtmeyer?
Aye.
By your vote, you approve the ordinance. Thank you.
An ordinance authorizing and directing the execution of a service agreement by and between the City of Washington, Missouri and Motorola Solutions.
Holtmeyer.
Oh, yeah.
Introduced by Councilmember Scornia.
Good evening. So there's two portions to this. The first portion is upgrading our existing backhaul stuff that we call a K-core to the M-core, which is necessary to complete our MOSWIN transition. So I had been working with Motorola, against Motorola, and finally came down to an agreed pricing on that. It started out, we ended up, and I saved a little over $19,000 by going back and forth with them. The contract had to be signed by March the 1st so that we can get that moving. And so the next step with that will be they'll give us a project manager, and then we can hopefully move this forward and put it behind us. The second portion of that, I should stick with the first one because there's an ordinance. So that's what that initial one is for, to do the backhaul so that we can continue the MOSWIN project.
We've been at this quite a while, haven't we?
Yes, I've been at this for quite a while.
This is one of your items on capital improvement sales tax?
Yes, it is.
So, with this ordinance and the next ordinance, then, like I said, we'll have most of this put
I'll be able to check off a couple.
There goes the money that Mary just saved us.
I saved some. I saved some. So,
Thank you.
so we're getting much closer with the whole most
Yes.
plan.
Any questions or comments?
The longest contract I've seen.
I didn't even give all the rigmarole to you. So,
Sounds good.
yeah.
An ordinance authorizing and directing the execution of a service agreement by and between the City of Washington, Missouri and Motorola Solutions. Scornia?
Yes.
Obermark?
Yes.
Wessels?
Aye.
Pettit?
Yes.
Sullentrup? Holtmeyer?
Aye.
By your vote, you approve the ordinance. Thank you.
An ordinance authorizing and directing the execution of a maintenance, support, and SUA addendum agreement by and between the City of Washington, Missouri and Motorola Solutions.
Holtmeyer.
Introduced by Councilmember Holtmeyer.
Okay, so this portion of the contract is to actually take care of maintenance once we accept the product as it is. So we'll have 1 year of maintenance, but in order to get this pricing, we had to do it at this time as well. So that SUA, most one is very unique in the fact that the state mandates a certain number of software upgrades. A lot of it is all software driven. So Motorola will actually be doing our maintenance with the state for that. So that's why this is in here, to continue the maintenance after beginning year 2. And it's in effect years 2 through 5.
Okay, any questions or comments?
An ordinance authorizing and directing the execution of a maintenance, support, and SUA addendum agreement by and between the City of Washington, Missouri and Motorola Solutions. Scornia?
Yes.
Obermark?
Yes.
Wessels? Pettit?
Yes.
Sullentrup? Holtmeyer?
Aye.
By your vote, you approve the ordinance. Thank you.
An ordinance authorizing and directing the execution of a purchase agreement by and between the City of Washington, Missouri and Outdoor Warning Consulting, LLC.
Holtmeyer.
Introduced by Councilmember Holtmeyer.
So this is replacing 6 out of 8 of our existing sirens. 2 of the sirens have been replaced, one of them last year when the storm took out one of them, but the other one had been replaced within the last 5 years. All the rest of the sirens citywide have been in place for some of them more than 25 years. So what this will do, right now we have what's called a rotating siren, which means that it sends out that signal one direction, sends it, it spins 30 seconds. It takes 30 seconds for it to make the rotation. The new sirens will actually are omnidirectional, and the sound will go out every direction all at once. So it will in fact increase our coverage with our sirens. They'll actually be putting in new electrical poles. They'll drop the other poles, and apparently we're going to use them at the landfill. It will also remove the electric for the sirens. They will now be run off of solar and battery backup, which are the two new sirens are already done that way. So,
The last one we had replaced was through insurance proceeds. I think we
Yes.
briefed you on that, so.
yes, this was a capital improvement.
Improvement project as well.
And last year, the storm took out the one at Burger and, Burger Park International and 100, so insurance replaced that one for us.
So Lisa, we have 8 total around
We have
town?
8 total, yes.
Any questions or comments?
An ordinance authorizing and directing the execution of a purchase agreement by and between the City of Washington, Missouri and Outdoor Warning Consulting, LLC. Scornia?
Yes.
Obermark?
Yes.
Wessels? Pettit?
Yes.
Sullentrup? Holtmeyer?
Aye.
By your vote, you approve the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
An ordinance
you,
accepting
Lisa.
the bid from Landscape Structures to approve the purchase of a playground at Main Park by the City of Washington, Missouri.
Holtmeyer.
Introduced by Councilmember Holtmeyer.
Yeah, this is a replacement for Main Park Playgrounds. We're replacing the 2 that's there with 1 new existing. 3 pods, basically, is what it is. Looking to go through an interlocal group government contract like we have in the past on the playgrounds.
This is a capital improvement
Yeah,
sales
it has
tax
6.5.
project as well.
Yeah.
So,
And where are the three?
It's gonna be located in Main Park. It's replacing the two existing there. It's gonna be behind the pavilion, kind of closer to the pine trees, right in that area there, to try to keep the kids away from the streets and stuff like that.
by Runsick Field,
Yeah.
Main
Runsick
Park
Field.
Pavilion.
All three pods will be right there?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you putting it together or the company?
It's installed. We will be doing site grading, the concrete, the rock, and landscaping. That's our portion of the things. We're still working with groups for more donations.
And the old ones will remain in place while they're installing.
Yeah, right. We will not remove the old ones until the new one is installed. It'll probably be late summer, early winter before them get removed.
Cool.
We're hoping to get everything done with getting this going by June 1st, so they're in play for supervised playground.
Any other questions or comments?
An ordinance accepting the bid from Landscape Structures to approve the purchase of a playground at Main Park by the City of Washington, Missouri. Scornia?
Yes.
Obermark?
Yes.
Wessels?
Aye.
Pettit?
Yes.
Solontrop? Holtmeyer?
Aye.
By your vote, you approve the ordinance. Thank you.
An ordinance authorizing and directing the execution of agreement by and between the City of Washington, Missouri and Unco Development Corp., Big Elm LLC, and Little Elm LLC, and amend the 2020 budget.
So
Introduced by Councilmember Scornia.
this is an agreement to go ahead and extend sewer. As a result of this, we have been in negotiations and discussions with Meadow Lake Subdivision for the period of over 2 years, close to 3 years possibly. We have had discussions with them about annexation, and so we anticipate, in talking with the subdivision officers that are the homeowners association group, that they will be submitting their annexation or voluntary petition for annexation next month. And so in anticipation of that, this agreement is put in place that as soon as they are submit that and that gets approved, then that we would move forward with the contract on this to go ahead and do construction to extend the sewer line, which is part of it. Water line will also be, as a result of that, that is not in this agreement. That's at a later date. But this is what, John, do you want to comment with regards to the actual, what's going to be done?
Yes, in order to connect Meadow Lake, the treatment plant essentially, that would be taken offline as part of Meadow Lake coming into the city, we have to extend sewer from the Autumn Leaf subdivision, which that's what this does. There was, as you are aware, you'd have to get through a property owner, and the Unco Development, Big Elm, and Little Elm LLC are the property owners that you have to get from city limits to the Meadow Lake subdivision. So part of that, we worked through, rather than to purchase a utility easement to physically pay for the rights to be on that property, Darren, staff, and I worked together to essentially extend sewer also to the Camp Schrader portion. Camp Schrader is to the northwest of this area. We essentially looked at the cost to purchase the easement and then looked at the cost to actually purchase the material and actually extend sewer there as well. So rather than just buy rights to a property, we essentially paid for pipe to extend two pieces of property onto the city system for a future development. So that's part of the negotiation in order to get to the Meadow Lake subdivision. So that's all part, in this agreement. We do have, I believe, 90 days once Meadow Lake does annex to get this sewer taken care of. We are moving diligently to get this done. I do have approval from the Department of Natural Resources to extend the sewers. We do have the bids on the actual material, and we are prepared to move as fast as we possibly can to get this taken care of. It is kind of a joint effort between the city and the developer. or I'm sorry, the owner of the property. The city will be doing all the as-built, all the inspections. We'll be coming to you essentially with a bill of sale at a future date to take those pipes and appurtenances over. However, they will be constructing them. We will be purchasing the material through ourselves.
Is there any cost to the DNR to close the old one and to get into ours?
There is a cost associated with it, but that is something that, as a part of the discussions with the subdivision, they will be paying for that portion.
Correct.
What if it doesn't go through? In other words, we're doing this now, and you were saying we're going to wait for approval.
This gives us the approval to go ahead and move forward with the agreement with them. We will go ahead and wait and see if, like I said, making sure that they go ahead and submit that. If they don't, then this agreement is
So
null.
then we're not contracting yet?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
It's contingent.
Yeah.
Can you have better maps in the future?
Absolutely.
I couldn't really
Oh.
see what's going on with that.
Well, we can get you a better one.
That's the plan. Yeah, yes.
Any other questions? Okay.
An ordinance authorizing and directing the execution of an agreement by and between the City of Washington, Missouri and Unco Development Corp., Big Elm LLC, and Little Elm LLC, and amend the 2020 budget. Scornia?
Yes.
Obermark?
Yes.
Wessels?
Aye.
Pettit?
Yes.
Yes.
Sullentrup? Holtmeyer?
Aye.
By your vote, you approve the ordinance. Thank you.
A resolution of the City of Washington, Missouri adopting the 2020-2025 St. Louis Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Holtmeyer?
Resolution.
I said your name.
Requesting a resolution to approve the St. Louis Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan as our document for dealing with disaster for the years 2020 to 2025. Essentially, this is an extension of the prior 5-year agreement that Chief Helmick was here about 5 years ago and asked you to approve. So in order to be eligible for FEMA funding for pre-disaster and post-disaster, we have to have a hazard mitigation plan in place. And the obvious solution is to take a regional approach because most communities in the area face similar hazards: floods, tornadoes, thunderstorms, all those sort of hazards. So we take a regional approach towards it.
Any questions or comments? So we need a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Obermark, seconded by Sullentrup, to approve the resolution. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? By your vote, you approve the resolution.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Commission, committee, and board reports. An ordinance approving the final plat of Lot 26, Plat 13 of the Heidman Industrial Park in the City of Washington, Franklin County, Missouri.
Holtmeyer.
Introduced by Councilmember Holtmeyer.
So this, again, is just real simple. We are not, by subdivision code, permitted to sell a lot unless it's actually recorded. Like I said, this was unplatted. So although it's unplatted and advertised 21, 22, 23, because we're just going in order of the last lot created, this will be Lot 26. So where Melton built was 25, we'll just make this one big Lot 26. And with your approval, we'll get it recorded, and that should be the last step before getting the project closed on, well, we're tentative closing March 3rd.
Any questions or comments?
An ordinance approving the final plat of Lot 26, Plat 13 of the Heidman Industrial Park in the City of Washington, Franklin County, Missouri. Scornia?
Yes.
Obermark?
Yes.
Wessels?
Aye.
Pettit?
Yes.
Sullentrup? Holtmeyer?
Aye.
By your vote, you approve the ordinance. Thank you.
Mayor's report.
I just wanted to mention that this past Tuesday, on the 11th, last Tuesday, a week ago, the group that Terry Sullentrup and his group went down to the met with a group in St. Louis, and they unanimously approved us being listed as a POW/MIA city. Mark Wessels joined them in that trip. And now the next portion to this is that the group from St. Louis, from down at Jefferson Barracks, will come out to Washington and present us with a proclamation or resolution announcing that we've received that designation. So they will be coming out on, I believe, the council meeting of April 6th. So we've been synchronizing our calendars here a little bit. So anyway, so thanks to the group, especially to Terry for taking this on, and it looks like we're going to get that all completed. The last item on the agenda is the e-cycle collection event. Be aware that that location has moved. It is
Yes, it's a Public
at the
Works.
Public Works Building.
Public Works Building
Out
on
at
April
Public
18th.
Works on April 18th. Okay, that's it.
City Administrator's report.
I just have just a couple items. I think we will have the waste hauling contract for you at the next,
We are diligently working
we're
towards it.
diligently working towards that. So John's been working hard on trying to finalize some of those things, so we're going to try to have that for you at the next one. The second item, the RFQs for the design build teams for the aquatic complex are due this Friday. So we're anxiously waiting for those. We do have quite a few people that have downloaded the plans, so it is encouraging.
Council comments?
Any comments?
And I do have a couple items for you in executive session.
City Attorney's report. Public vote on whether or not to hold a closed meeting to discuss personnel, legal, and real estate matters pursuant to Section 610.021 RSMO 2000. Scornia?
Yes.
Obermark?
Yes.
Wessels?
Aye.
Pettit?
Yes.
Sullentrup? Holtmeyer?
Aye.
Okay,